This is one of the last sword-making shops in Toledo, Spain. The city has been known for the craft for over 2,500 years. Conquerors and kings have used Toledo's steel weapons in battle throughout history. Today, it's mostly an art form for tourists, film productions, and collectors. But the pandemic has threatened the already fragile business. We visited the last traditional forges to see how these bladesmiths are still standing. Jose Ramon Moreno starts heating a piece of steel in a furnace to around 1,000 degrees Celsius. Ancient Toledo blacksmiths spent centuries developing the perfect recipe for the steel they use, but Jose won't share it.
El secreto del temple de Toledano, obviamente es un secreto, no se va a contar del todo.
Originally, they made blades with a strip of pure iron enveloped with regular steel to make it stronger. Then, they figured out a perfect formula that allows them to make the swords with pure steel, but just as strong. This is what made their swords famous throughout history.
Aunque los grandes artesanos, los maestros espaderos, sabemos ya de la calidad del acero haciéndole sonar en los yunques.
Jose learned the craft from his father when he was 16 years old. But it's taken him a lifetime to make a sword using just his eyes and ears.
Hay que saber forjar de cualquier cosa que te den. Eso es el arte de saber forjar.
With the help of this machine, Jose stretches and shapes the hot metal to the right size and thickness. It's one of the two mechanical parts of the whole process. Then he dunks the hot blade in a cask full of oil. Quenching is a key step for blacksmiths to control the steel's hardening process.
El aceite hace que la reducción de grados sea más lenta que si se mete en agua. Si metía en agua se cristalizaría y se partiría como un cristal.
Then Jose puts the steel back in the furnace, this time at a much lower temperature, around 200 degrees Celsius. This technique is called tempering. It reduces the brittleness of the steel while still keeping it hard. The blade is ready once the metal turns bluish.
Ya es flexible, pero dura a la vez.
Before modern temperature gauges, this color change was the only way for a smith to know they had done it correctly.
Hoy en día puede hacer espada todo el mundo, porque coges un horno grande, importante, bonito, que te indica a tanto grado tiene que templar, a tanto grado tiene que enfriar, y eso lo hace cualquiera en un simple ordenador.
While it's still warm, Jose hammers the blade by hand against the anvil to straighten and balance it. These strikes leave marks that set an authentic, handmade sword apart from a machine-made one. Then he cools it down again, this time in water. Jose polishes and refines the edges with a grinder, the only other mechanical step. But he doesn't sharpen it too much. Most blades are meant more for decoration than fighting nowadays. Finally, he assembles the hilt and attaches it to make a complete and balanced sword.
El tratamiento de trabajar el acero, el pasar de los padres a hijos, pues se fue cada vez haciendo mejor calidad, mejores espadas y se convirtieron en las más demandadas porque eran las mejores del mundo.
Different styles of these weapons have been popular throughout history. Hannibal and the Carthaginian army crossed the Alps to fight the Romans with Toledo forged falcata in 218 BC. Legend has it, Charlemagne united most of Europe under a sword that he got during his Iberian campaign. And even fictional swordsmen, the Three Musketeers, wielded rapiers developed by Toledo smiths. But as firearms became the weapon of choice for the world's armies, fewer people needed quality swords for fighting. In the 1980s, there were a few hundred bladesmiths in the greater Toledo area. But almost 40 years later, the last forges are struggling to stay open.
El futuro de la espadería es como el carbón negro. Si no cambia esto, la espadería de Toledo va a ser una leyenda. No hay nadie que nos siga, ni quien nos quiera seguir, ni tampoco hay negocios para seguir. Esto está para, en años, y no mucho, desaparecer.
And the past year has been especially tough. Tourists are the main clientele for the city's sword shops, but the pandemic kept people away. In summer 2020, we visited the last workshop still in the heart of Toledo's historic city center. Mariano Zamorano ran this sword factory that had been in his family for 5 generations.
Ahora mismo estamos hablando de una cosa que está a punto de que se puede extinguir porque no hay demanda. Ahí tengo un arsenal de espadas paradas, totalmente sin poder haberla dado salida, porque al no haber venido turismo.
Foreign competition was also a big concern. Mariano only sold hand-forged swords, which can cost up to 400 euros, depending on complexity. Mass-produced ones that come mainly from China can be found all over Toledo's souvenir shops for half the price. But for those looking for an authentic Toledo sword, there was no doubt about paying top dollar.
When you see, the work that goes into it, I think it's definitely a fair price, yeah.
This demanding work even cost Mariano 2 of his fingers as a young man.
Hombre, si te cortas 2 dedos y te va a impedir trabajar, poco trabajas.
But at 69 years old, the conditions in the workshop were wearing on him.
Ya como ves, trabajo con faja ortopédica para poder estar de pie las 4 horas que vengo por la mañana. Ya me canso.
So late in 2020, he decided to retire. He sold the Zamorano sword factory to one of his employees, Santi Encinas. But in March 2021, Santi had to close the workshop and find a new location to keep the soul of Toledo's traditional industry alight.